Hi friends, it's Simi John. Thank you so much for tuning in again. We've been talking about hearing the voice of God, and we know God is always speaking. But then how come we don't always hear the voice of God? I know in my own life, sometimes there are weeks, sometimes months, where I feel like I don't hear the voice of God. I believe there are two reasons that we miss out on hearing the voice of God. And today I'm going to be talking about reason number one. I don't know about you, but 2019 is just flying by, especially the month of May. It feels like it's just been non-stop craziness around here. And I feel most of us have this to-do lists and events, and we're just consumed by worry of getting here and getting there, getting this done, getting that done. And I believe the number one reason that we miss out on hearing the voice of God is worry. We see this in Luke chapter 10, verse 38. This is a picture, it's a story of Jesus going to the house of Mary and Martha. Now, Mary and Martha were devout followers of Jesus. They were actually friends with Jesus. Mary and Martha were the sisters of Lazarus, you know, the guy that died and Jesus resurrected him from the dead. Yeah, this is them. And Mary and Martha have invited Jesus into their house, and one of the sisters, Mary, is just sitting there at the feet of Jesus, and Martha is just running around trying to do all the things, okay? Now, for those of you who have heard the story, Martha usually gets the bad rap, right? Everyone's like, Martha, Martha, Martha. But I admit, if Jesus was coming to my house, I would probably be like Martha. She was just trying to be a good hostess because Jesus is a very important person. He always has his disciples with him. There's always a large crowd following him. So all these people are inside her house, and houses back there weren't like houses now, right? It's like a small space, probably just one big open room. And so she's probably trying to make sure that the coffee's hot, the food is on point, and there's no dust anywhere. Kids aren't breaking things, people have places to sit. So she's just trying to be a good hostess, trying to take care of everything. And she quickly glances over and she sees her sister Mary just sitting there, chilling at the feet of Jesus, and she's furious. And she goes to Jesus and she says, Jesus, don't you care that I'm doing all this stuff and my sister's just sitting here? Tell her to come help me. And Jesus responds to Martha and says, Martha, Martha, you are worried about so many things, but one thing is needful, and Mary has chosen the better portion, and it will not be taken away from her. Martha had a good heart. She wanted to listen to the voice of God. She invited Jesus into her heart, into her home, yet she completely misses out on Jesus. And that's something that we can all identify with, right? We invite Jesus into our heart, into our lives. We go to church, we might do Bible study, we might even try to do quiet time, but our minds are everywhere else. We're preoccupied with all these thoughts. We're worried about so many things, about dinner and the kids and activities and events and all the things that we have to get done. And we miss out on the voice of God. We must learn to be present in his presence if we want to hear the voice of God. We must learn to be present in his presence. Now, I'm not Stephen Furtick, but that's good, okay? Y'all can tweet that. We must learn to be present in his presence. That's so important. Now, what does that look like practically? I'm not saying you need your Bible and just a highlighter and sit until you hear the voice of God. We can't live life that way, right? But it means to pray to God to make us more aware of his presence throughout our day. That's a simple prayer that I pray as I go to work every morning. God, help me to hear your voice today. Help me to see you, see what you're doing in my life, in the encounters and the conversations that I have with other people today, making us sensitive to the presence of God and learning how to quiet our spirits. And when those worries come and our mind begins to wander during quiet time and Bible study time, bringing it back and making sure that our thoughts are fixed on Jesus and being still before him. That's so important because worry distracts us from the presence of Jesus. And Martha, the first thing she does is she complains. She goes to Jesus as she's worried about all these people, all these things that she has to do. She begins to panic and she goes to Jesus and says, "Don't you care?" And that reminds me of the story of the disciples as they're sitting on the boat with Jesus and a great storm comes and they're worried and they're scared and they go to Jesus and what do they say? "Jesus, don't you care?" And that's oftentimes what worry does. We miss out on the presence of God. We miss out on who Jesus is to us. And we don't hear his voice, and we miss out on the power of God. We miss out on what he is doing when we're consumed by worry. That's why it says, do not be anxious. Do not be worried. Instead, with prayer and supplication, bring all your needs to God. All right, we need to make sure that we cancel out that worry by getting close to God and being still before him, and through prayer, talk to God. It's amazing to me how Martha invited Jesus into her house, yet completely misses out on hearing the voice of God. And I think it's so important for us to prepare our hearts and prepare and position our ears to listen to God, and not simply think just because you go to church or just because you go to a Bible study that you're going to hear the voice of God. It doesn't happen that way. We have to prepare our hearts and we have to position our ears. That's why in Psalm 50 verse 7 it says, "Listen, my people, and I will speak." That's so interesting because it usually is when someone speaks, we listen, right? We hear them speak and then we tune our ears and we listen. But God in his word says, "Listen and I will speak." Listen first. Position your ear first towards me. Prepare your hearts for my word first, and then you will hear my voice. Then I will speak to you. Be still and know that I am God. Let's learn to be still with our thoughts and be present in the presence of Jesus. Psalm 27 verse 4. This is King David. He's the king. He has everything, yet this is what he says. "I'm asking God for one thing, only one thing, to live with him in his house my whole life. I'll contemplate his beauty. I'll study at his feet." I pray that that would be our desire, that our one thing would be just to sit at his feet, not to do all the things, not to please people, even though they're good things, not to worry about getting everywhere and doing all the things that we need to get done and juggling our to-do list. But let our one thing, let our ultimate heart's desire be to hear the voice of God. I'm Simi John, cheering you on.